The City of Albuquerque Public Art Urban Enhancement Division and Department of Arts and Culture proudly present Take Another Look. Built on the foundation of two city ordinances, Art in Municipal Places, and the Urban Enhancement Trust Fund, the Public Art Urban Enhancement Division provides funds to artists to create art for the public, as well as arts organizations for arts and cultural programming. Join us as we discuss everything related to funding artists in the public realm with host Joni Palmer.
Hello, I'm Joni Palmer, and welcome back to Take Another Look at Albuquerque's public art. Thank you for tuning in today for our first podcast of 2025. This is the first of 3 episodes about the city's Urban Enhancement Trust Fund, UETF, and the unique residency it offers. Today, I will be talking with 2 public art program staff. We haven't spoken with either of them yet in this podcast series, Eric Werner and Madrone Matishak.
Matishak, yes.
Matishak. Okay. We're going to talk about all things UETF. We'll talk about the board, the policies, past and current projects, and then we'll spend the last part of the episode talking about the Artists Resiliency Residency. So, let me tell you a little bit about my 2 guests today. Eric Werner is Management Analyst for the Public Art Urban Enhancement Division. We're going to talk about what that actually means in a minute, so thank you for joining us today. And Madrone joined the City of Albuquerque Public Art Urban Enhancement Division as a UNM intern in January 2020. Specifically working for the granting body, the UETF. So you've been doing this for a few years now. In her time at the city, she has helped build out and clean up the public art databases, which we've talked a little bit about. I mean, those databases are really important.
And fast.
Yeah. And currently coordinates the UETF Resiliency Residency Program. In 2024, and I did not know this, she was an Albuquerque Business First 40 Under 40 honoree. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's pretty awesome.
I don't talk about it that much, but I felt like maybe it'd be a good place to say that.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you for joining us today. Mm-hmm. So now that you know just a little bit about my guests and you're going to learn a bit more about them, I just want to preface the conversation. And the Urban Enhancement Trust Fund is a very little known part of the Public Art Division's initiatives, and one we really haven't even mentioned in our podcast series yet. And it's been around for 40 years. So kind of surprising. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about it. So let's start talking about, first, you all. Eric, your title is Public Art Urban Enhancement Division Management Analyst. What does that mean?
Well, if you want to get super specific, it's actually a Management Analyst 2.
Oh, okay.
Which means absolutely nothing. I am not sure where the title came from. Basically, what I do for the Public Art Urban Enhancement Division, or PAUED, is I'm the person who writes the contracts. I do the majority of the purchasing for the division, and I work closely with our legal team and our accounts payable team. Long story short, what I tell people is they have to be nice to me because I'm the person who gets them paid.
Okay,
when it comes to artists. So a lot of what I do is mostly on the administrative side.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And how did you find yourself at the city in public art and in this position?
Well, I could spend half an hour talking about my convoluted path here, but to break it down into a nutshell, I graduated from UNM with a theater degree, and as part of that, I learned production theater, lighting and sound and that stuff. And so in college, I started doing production for a local company, concert lighting and sound, and eventually that translated into getting a job with the city for the special events division. So my first 10 years with the city were doing special events, Summerfest, Freedom Forth. But part of that job was learning how to write really complicated contracts for merging the city's system with a large booking agent, for example, WME, merging those contracts together with headlining performers, their agreement writer as well, and making them all fit into the city's procurement system. So I got really good at that. So after my time doing events, came around, I just started focusing on contracts in general because I had a really good idea of how the city systems worked.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So Public Art is lucky to have you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Madrone, your title is Special Projects Coordinator. And what do you do?
Yeah.
I know it's more than just coordinator.
Yes, yes. And yeah, special projects has kind of served as a way for me to wear many hats in the program through the years. What I do right now specifically is manage the UETF Artists Resiliency Residency program. And so what I always say is that my job is really to talk to artists. And so it's, we help fund them, we help give them money, but also part of my job is to help them navigate through having potentially money, like grant money, to do their work for the very first time. We have a lot of people who have never gotten any kind of grant before. So it's helping them through that process, also helping them like navigate different city processes if they want to use, city facilities for work, and also just helping to direct them in the right directions if they're like, I want to do a project in this venue, and I'm like, well, we have this relationship with the person who runs it, let me get you in touch. So it's a lot of like connecting dots in many different places and helping to bridge these connections.
Cool.
Yeah.
That sounds fun.
It is a pretty awesome job, actually.
Yeah, making those
I feel
connections.
really lucky to have it, yeah.
Yeah. Well, so I'll ask you the same question that I just asked Eric. How did you get to this place?
I
where you
drove
are?
here in the morning. No. I feel like that's kind of an Eric joke, actually. So I also went to UNM, and I graduated with, I was going for dance with a contemporary concentration. And then I also was doing a minor in arts leadership and business. I think it has a different name now. But anyway, part of that program is to do an internship. And Regina is the one who manages that program at the time, and she suggested that I work at Public Art. And I, at the time, had no idea that the city actually had a public art program, much less that they had the UETF Trust Fund, which, did granting, which is something that I was interested in at the time, because I was like, well, grant writing seems like I could make some money, and also
It's a good skill to have.
yeah. And so I started in January of 2020, as you said. Immediately things shut down, and I just kind of asked Sherry and Matt, who were kind of like my mentors in that position, like, what else can I do? And so I helped compile a really big resource list for artists in Albuquerque to help them get funding from, all of the ways that people were trying to help artists out during COVID. And then also helped on the administrative side with a lot of the rollout of a ton of grants for nonprofits. And since then, my job has kind of evolved into many different places, but I feel like kind of at the root of all of it, and the root of what we all do at the division is really just like making sure that artists have all the resources that they possibly have.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you mentioned Regina Chavez Puchetti,
Yes.
who used to be, I just want to do a quick shout out for the UNM program, and I don't know what it's called now, but
I think it's just called Arts Management or something like that. Yeah.
It's a great program.
Yeah.
And so if you're interested in arts management, go check out their website. She is no longer leading. She actually helped really shape the program.
Yeah.
Check out their website. It's a good program.
And actually, kind of fun fact, the person who runs it now, her name is Katie Dukes Walker, and she is a Resiliency Residency recipient of this last cycle.
Oh, cool.
So
Okay,
she's also someone who like does her own artistic practice, and
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
that's fun.
Okay, so, well, let's talk about UETF. So first, what is it? What is the Urban Enhancement Trust Fund? And, let's start with, what is its mission? You've started to touch on that a little bit, but yeah.
Well, I'll jump in on that, and to give you that, I'm not sure if I'm jumping your questions, Joni, but to give you a little history on where the UETF came from. So in the early 80s, there was a lawsuit by the city and the state over some contractors at Kirtland Air Force Base regarding taxes and whether they or not they had to pay them, and it turned out they did. So I don't remember how much the state got, but the city ended up with a $6 million settlement in 1981. And so in 1983, somebody came up with the idea that they were going to invest this $6 million into a trust fund, which became the Urban Enhancement Trust Fund. And at first, any proceeds were used for both capital programs and for cultural programs. And it stayed that way for, I don't remember exactly how many years, but eventually it got to the point where it was no longer capital programs, it was specifically for cultural programs. So what happens is it's a 2-year cycle. So every 2 years, any money made through that trust fund investment, 90% of it is what we operate with and 10% is reinvested. So the goal is the money never runs out.
Right.
And so like for instance, this cycle, we're looking at right around about $350,000 amount that we have to spend. And so what we do is we invest that money into cultural organizations throughout the city. And so a lot of what public art does is obtaining tangible physical art, but the Urban Enhancement Trust Fund is more for I'm not sure, non-tangible. So we have a lot of dance programs that are funded. I'm just thinking of the ones I've most recently worked with. The Albuquerque Folk Festival. So there's a lot of music festivals, dance programs. And so it's more about funding programs than individual artists. And that's where the Resiliency Residency comes in, which Madrone can talk about more. But that's new. But we've been doing this, or the city has been doing this, as you said, for almost 40 years, trying to get this money out into the community and create events and opportunities for Albuquerque artists.
That's great. Yeah. Now, so who all is involved in UETF? Right, there's a board. Are all the staff, or is it just you two? Yeah, tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's mostly us, and then Sherry, of course, Brueggemann, she, as the division manager, she has quite a hand in how all of this works. But yeah, we have a board. It's structured similar to the arts board in that we have, ideally, a board member from each council district and then 2 at large. And they are the ones who, every 2 years, they're so amazing, they will spend hours reviewing all of the applications that organizations send in for projects and go through this really intensive scoring process. We'll usually meet and then talk through all of the scores, and then they might go back because, someone pitched an organization, was like, I really love this project, and they're like, oh yeah, I do too, actually. And so it's a really thoughtful process and really intense that these board members have to go through. But they've been absolutely fantastic. We have some board members that have been on for a long time now, and so really know how the process works and how it's kind of shifting year to year depending on, new priorities that the board brings or that staff brings as well.
So UETF is an umbrella for what? So what all happens? You were talking about programs and the residency is part of it. What else is, explain a little bit more about what's under that umbrella.
I mean, it's pretty much those 2 things. It's the regular 2-year cycle that gives money to arts organizations and groups, or arts and cultural organizations and groups, and then the resiliency residency. Okay. Yeah.
And how old is the resiliency residency? How long has that been a part of the program?
That was, let me just think back for a second. It was really started, it was a post-COVID thing. Okay. And I guess I'll just jump into how it really. So during 2020, during COVID, public art, because of its ordinance, was not able to give monies to temporary projects, or at least a substantial amount of money to temporary projects or performance. And we, as a division, put out a lot of calls for visual art and for tangible things like, paintings and sculptures. And this really helped a lot of visual artists during COVID.
Right.
And we were just thinking, like, performing artists and people who work in temporal kind of forms, maybe installation work, they have no way to sell their work right now. You could maybe charge $5 every time someone wants to view your work, but that doesn't really, it's not really liable or viable. But so because UETF is structured that we give money to nonprofits, we came up with the idea of having fiscal sponsor organizations who would be able to take this money and then disperse it to artists that were accepted under this program. And that was our first cycle was in 2022.
Okay, so it's really new.
It's very new. Yes.
Because when I first heard of the Artists Resiliency Residency, I thought it was about resiliency in the city, but it's very different. It's about helping artists be resilient in their careers.
Yeah, and it's about giving some people that very first boost. And what I have seen, managing this program is that there's a lot of people who get this grant and suddenly feel incredibly empowered because someone is telling them your work is worth it. And a lot of them haven't ever heard that before. They've never gotten a grant. They've never even applied for a grant before.
Right.
And so I've just heard so many amazing stories of these artists who feel incredibly validated after receiving this grant.
I was also going to say, I think one of the things that is such a beneficial aspect of the program and that Madrone and Sherry both help with is, there's a lot of artists out there who are amazing artists, painters, dancers, musicians, whatever, but they only know their art. And one of the things that we strive to do is kind of teach them the business aspect of their art, how to make a living, knowing how to charge for your art, how much to charge for your art, how to budget, how to tax, all of that sort of thing that a lot of artists don't think about. And that's kind of where we really come in, like Madrone with her art in business management or whatever it's called now, art plus business is good. And so that's one of the things that we really try and do, and that we look to our fiscal sponsors for the Resiliency Residency to help with as well.
Well, let's talk about that, because so who's applying for are artists applying for the residency and have to find a fiscal sponsor?
Well, go ahead.
No, okay. Sorry, if you want to, you can.
No, because we asked ourselves that question, and so it's been a little managing it as we're learning as well and learning as well. But
yeah, specifically for the residency, organizations who are interested in being fiscal sponsors will apply, I would say, like 6 months before the artist application even opens, and they get evaluated by the board, and the board decides who is going to, essentially be mentors to these artists.
Okay.
And then once the artists go through the application and they're chosen, they can choose who they would like to work with. But sometimes they're like, I don't really care, I just want the money, which is fine. We're fine with that. And we'll just assign them a fiscal sponsor based off of, their project, what they're interested in. If they want to do community engagement, then we'll pair them with an organization who's really community focused. So part of that puzzle is also happening there, where we're like trying to fit the right people together so that it's the best working relationship.
Yeah, that must be a lot of work.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it's dialogic.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So just kind of dig in a little bit more about the specifics. So, and this might be a question for you, is how is that money, so you have a fiscal, for those artists who don't, have never done this before.
Sure.
What is the role of the fiscal sponsor versus the role of, say, you as one of the staff people? How does the money run through so that they know how are they getting paid and how much money?
Sure. And one of the main reasons that we use a fiscal sponsor is just so we're falling within the procurement guidelines of the city of Albuquerque. We can't give money directly to we can't give money to a nonprofit, otherwise that's a violation of the anti-donation clause. So we need something in deliverables, is how we refer to it. And so It's kind of like Madrone said. It depends on the artists themselves. Some of them, like you said, they just want money. They don't want anybody to hold their hand. So basically, we give the money to the fiscal sponsor. The fiscal sponsor gives it to them, and in exchange, we ask for a report. That's the deliverable.
Okay. Yeah.
Or if it's often images or video, if it's a performance, just something we can add to our databases saying this is what we got in exchange for the funds. But again, there are some who really want that hand holding, and it kind of depends on the fiscal sponsor itself. There are some who are much more active. They want to go out there and they want to work with the artists directly and guide them through all of the process. So it's kind of about finding that fit versus what the artist wants versus what the fiscal sponsor is willing to give.
Okay. So what is the application process? So you're in June of this year is the end of this cycle,
Yes.
2-year cycle.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. Most likely, things are, because it's such a fresh program, a lot of this is still being kind of worked through. But how it has worked from the first cycle to this one currently, around the fall and winter is when the application will release, so that will be fall of 2025. And then hopefully the next cycle will start in January of 2026. So it's an 18-month time period that the artists can use to present some public presentation of their work. And that's really the main deliverable for this program, is just a public presentation. But for the application, we really wanted to emphasize accessibility and ease with it. So we don't ask for any previous work samples. We don't ask for them to, give us their CV. We ask simply for a description of what they would like to use the money for. And if there's any community engagement, and that is kind of about it. It's a very simple application. And yeah, we wanted people to feel like if they had never applied for something, they could apply for this and just sit down and write about their project and not have to do all of this back end work of gathering all of these sources and, taking photos of the work, which some people don't have. And so we wanted to make it really, really easy for anyone.
So it's an online form, basically.
Yeah.
Right? And the applications have been already as of January 20th, right? Was the application deadline?
That's not for the Resiliency Residency.
Okay.
That is for the UETF organizational application.
Okay.
So yeah, that will close, or that has closed on January 20th, and now we're in the process of getting all of those applications to our board members, because the idea is that there's quite a lot of steps. Once they've approved or once they've selected, because usually just from past we get 70 to 80 applications and we have funding for about 30 organizations. So it's competitive.
Yeah.
And so once that's selected and the board has agreed that these are however many we're identifying, then that needs to be approved by the chief operating officer. And then once that happens, the entire thing needs to go before city council to get approved there because of the amount of funding that we're looking at. So the goal is to have the awards awarded and ready to start July 1st of 2025.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Do you want to add anything else to that in terms of if there's artists listening? I'm thinking about, they can think about the upcoming cycle.
Sure, yeah. For any artists who want to apply to the Resiliency Residency, that application will most likely be coming out in fall of 2025. So.
Oh, and as Madrone stated, the application for fiscal sponsors will be coming out earlier.
Yes, at an unknown date.
To be determined.
TBD.
We're trying to focus on getting this section of the UETF process done before we move to the which is why it's staggered like that.
Okay.
They only have 18 months because that's a lot to ask our board to read through 70 organization applications, and then I don't remember how many individual we got.
It was
something.
380 something.
Wow.
I
That's
believe.
exciting. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really great.
It was, I mean, one of the most successful applications in terms of who applied. So yeah, it was really great just to see that there were so many artists in Albuquerque who wanted to be a part of it.
Yeah. And so can you give us an example of one of the current artists?
One
in
of the
residence?
current artists, and actually I think one of them will be coming on for a future episode, but Gael Luna is an artist who is working in trans rights, and they did a really great show at Harwood because they also got their Artist in Residency program, which gave them studio space and an exhibition. And their project was all about trans people in sports and in competitive sports and weightlifting. And so they made these really beautiful designs of capes and luchador masks that they displayed huge, like printed out really big around the walls. And then we have, it's really great because the program really offers the artist to do kind of whatever they want. There isn't a set thing that they have to do. And so there's a lot of artists who they're using this money to just be able to work in their studios at home. And I've had the privilege of being able to go to a lot of these places. And there's a composer who lives up in Nob Hill who, showed me something that she's been working on that's about selkies. It's like this whole mythical story, but it's a composition for piano.
Like the water horse?
I don't really.
Wasn't that what a selkie is?
It's
a water horse.
It's like
Irish.
it's an Irish mythical. It's a female who turns into a seal.
Yes.
It's a seal. Okay.
It's a seal.
It's a horse.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. So there's this huge breadth of what these projects entail, and then so it's just been a gift to be able to see all of that.
Just real quick to add on to what Madrone said, because she mentioned it briefly, but one of the things that we like to emphasize is the grants itself may not be huge. They're $5,000 right now for the Resiliency Residency, but so many of those artists and the UETF organizations use our grants as seed grants.
Right.
Because it's a lot easier to get an NEA grant if you say, hey, the city of Albuquerque is supporting me, or all of these other organizations. So that's one of the things, it might not be the biggest grant in the world, but we do know that a lot of places use it to apply for others.
Yeah, it's a springboard.
Yeah.
And do they get to meet each other?
Yes, yeah. So we've had a few meetings, very informal, like at a coffee shop, kind of let's all hang out and just talk. This is also part of the program too, is just, we're all artists. I'm also coming at this job from the perspective of an artist as well, and also artists are really busy and sometimes they can't make it. So it's balancing the. I want everyone to feel like they are in a community, and also if that's not something that you want, that's not something that you want, and it's not required. I feel like we really emphasize allowing each artist to make this residency what they want it to be.
Right. Yeah, that's great. Very, very flexible.
Yeah.
And evolving, it sounds like.
Yes,
right?
definitely.
So if people want to find out information about UETF and the residency, they can go to cabq.gov and then UETF. And then if you want to learn about the residency, the Artists Resiliency Residency, it's /artist-resiliency-residency. And I've been through that site a few times, and there's a lot of information. And if you're interested, you can also reach out to Eric at Werner, WERNER, at cabq.gov, or Madrone at M for Madrone, and her last name MATISCASSHAK.
Yes.
At cabq.gov. But you can also, because I was just messing up all those emails, you can find them online at CABQ, and they'd be happy to answer any of your questions. And that would be for artists, for nonprofits who are interested in participating in this program. So reach out. And as you said earlier, stay tuned for our next episode, which will be 2 episodes. We'll be talking with artists from the Resiliency Residency, as well as some of the nonprofits. So you'll be able to hear a little bit about that whole range of people who are involved. Any final thoughts? Anything you want to share before we leave?
No, just it was a pleasure. Thank you for having us. It's nice to be able to get the word out, especially for upcoming artists. Keep an eye out for that Resiliency Residency.
Yeah, same. Thank you. I do feel like UETF is I feel like we've always called it like a little secret. It's a little public art program secret. Not a lot of people know about it, so it's nice that maybe we can get the word out a little more.
Still, you had 300 something.
That's
artists.
true.
I mean, that's a pretty impressive, actually.
Yeah.
That's really wonderful. So, to my listeners, I hope this episode has given you some insights about UETF and that you want to explore more of what the different programs are. I mean, the public art program is multifaceted, right? So there's a lot of different things going on. So check out their website. Also, all of the people I've interviewed on this podcast are, just have incredible backgrounds, come from different places, sometimes very circuitous kind of pathways. So if you want to learn more, and I'm going to focus on Madrone right now because she's doing some amazing work as a dancer, a choreographer, and as a producer. Why don't you tell the audience, what is your website?
So my website is madronematishak.com. It is a Polish spelling, so it's MadroneMatysiak.com. It's kind of long. And you can find a lot of projects that I've been a part of before. There's a couple upcoming as well. You can just find lots of videos of me dancing and of my work. So
and something upcoming.
Oh yes,
right. So so take a look and follow her. Are you on Instagram?
I am on Instagram, unfortunately.
Aren't we all? Yeah. Okay. So you can find all of this information that we've been talking about and more in our newsletter. You can sign up for our newsletter at cabq.gov/publicart/podcast. So thank you for listening, and I hope you will join us for our next episode, the second in this set of 3, which will be released in February. So I hope after you've listened to this podcast that you will go out and take another look at Albuquerque's public art. Thanks.
Thanks for listening. To learn more about the Albuquerque Public Art Program, the Public Art Collection, opportunities for artists, and so much more, visit cabq.gov/publicart. To learn more about the Urban Enhancement Trust Fund, visit cabq.gov/UETF. Tune in next time to take another look at the City of Albuquerque Public Art Urban Enhancement Division.